let me welcome Dr. Samir Parekh. He doesn't really need an introduction. This session is in association with Rupa Publications. While you advise everybody else on being well mentally, how have been the last 150 days for you? And how do you keep your mental well-being in a good shape?
I think, like anybody else, it's been unprecedented episode in, I think, all our lives. I mean, from doing all clinics and seeing all patients online to doing an umpteen number of web-based engagements like this and social media like this. It's been, you've worked almost twice your normal routine, and then everybody being at home and making sure that you create the balance, find time to create the balance, to be honest. But I think it's just been such an unprecedented episode in all our lives. The sheer task of going through it and doing what you're supposed to do, the job at hand. I mean, you're a medical practitioner, you're a mental health practitioner, you do what you do. So right now, frankly, it's all been about work. And in between, when Rupa gives me a nudge, so you end up writing a bit. So not just the 3 books that you mentioned, but we wrote actually an e-reader right during the lockdown, which was on how to keep your mind fit during a pandemic.
Okay. So you are saying Dr. Parekh is busy doing what he does best, and that keeps his mind fit, right? But don't you miss the human connection? Don't you miss having a coffee with some of your patients who come to you and talk to you? How do we replace this human connection?
I think what we need to understand is this is a cross section of our life. This is not going to be the way of our life for a long time, right? So with colleagues, we've done a lot of web interactions. We've seen films together. We've done film analysis together. We've had a few team dinners together where we're all on a video and eating together. We've seen shows together. So I've connected to more distant family, friends, and cousins in the last 3 months than I have probably in the decade. So it's a way we look at it. Had an episode like this, a pandemic like this happened, let's say 50 years back, just imagine what our life would have been.
Without been cast away. We would have been cast away in our own islands.
Exactly. I mean, imagine having a postcard or a telegram, the only source, or a landline that may or may not work, the only source of connecting people. At least today we can see people, hear people. I think we've talked a lot about this emotional distancing. I think if our communication is spot on, you won't feel the emotional distance.
Beautiful. Dr. Parekh, again, you've been in this field for more than 20 years, right? And what is the change you've noticed when people talk about mental well-being? It was a taboo to say, oh, I'm going to a psychologist, I'm going to a mental well-being expert. And पुराने ज़माने में हम बोलते पागल है ये, right? इसका दिमाग खराब है, right? I'm giving you very colloquial, very basic expressions. So how is the mindset change? Where, like, if I have a bruise on my finger or hand, I need to go and show it to a doctor. So if I have a mental bruise, what is the problem going and talking to a doctor who's an expert in healing that? So tell us, is there a mindset change? What is it? How much more long way we have to go?
To be honest, Dr. Batra, both things. Yes, there has been change. It'll be unfair to say that we haven't changed. But it'll be equally unfair to say that we don't have a very long way to go. I mean, even today we have a lot of stigma. Even today, the portrayal of mental illness and mental health in media continues to be iffy more often than not. The portrayal has ranged from comedy to violence to psychopathy and crime, but the sensitivity and research has largely been missed. I think our struggle essentially also as a country has been that the number of experts continues to be low. So broadly speaking, you have almost like a 800% shortage of all mental health experts put together, as in psychiatrists, psychologists, counselor, social worker, clinical psych. You put all that together. and most of this population is in the urban cities. So as you go away from the urban India to the rural belts, this expert density becomes lesser and lesser, which is where the challenge kind of continues. The other thing is, I still feel that whereas educational institutes like schools have largely gradually started imbibing mental health as a part of what they do, whether it is life skills, whether it is counselors, I still feel that corporate India needs to do a lot more. I think mental health outcomes don't matter so much to us beyond the PNLs and the EBITDAs. I think it's time that organizations start looking at mental health outcomes, because until you normalize mental health conversations, until you give the person the confidence that he or she can go and talk to a colleague or a supervisor or a boss that, hey, I'm having sleep disturbance, or hey, I'm having mood changes, I need to go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a counselor, and being treated in the same way, like you mentioned, if somebody would have said, I had a typhoid or a liver ailment. I think that change is something that is that we need a bit more. But if we continue on this path and media organizations like you continue to talk about mental health and role models of the society, from sports to film to other industries, speak a lot more
or
about mental
cinema.
health, and corporate India takes more initiative, I think we will be able to bridge this gap of communication, which has a negative impact on people who struggle with mental health issues.
Right. Now tell me, I also want to talk to you about how will this change? One is you talked about that we are less on capacity by 800%. So why do less people choose to be mental health professionals when there is so much need? Second is, what does society needs to do? I know media narrative plays a role, but beyond that, as parents, as brothers, sisters, as citizens, what do we need to do?
So two parts to it. It's not that people don't choose. It's just that, like in a medical college, you have X number of seats allocated for each branch. So the number of seats and the deficit, and how many years it will take for the deficit, I think that's where the challenge is. Similarly, in psychology, the number of places where clinical psych is available, where you could do MPhil or PhD, those seats are not enough. I think that's one aspect. Also, um, deficit is one thing, but people coming for help is another thing. So that gap needs to be bridged, and the only way that can happen is consistent conversations through media, making sure that incorrect myth, factually incorrect conversation gets stopped, stereotypy, discrimination, judgmentalism gets stopped. How will that happen? Organizations taking a top down approach where their value system and organizational visions need to include mental health outcomes, where schools and other educational institutes start looking at mental health curriculums and give life skills and empowerment of life skills for children, where role models of the society also speak about mental health and normalize the conversation, and media's portrayal needs to be a lot more sensitive than it is.
Thank you. Now, I want to ask you one more question. Is there a playbook to being mentally healthy? Is there a kind of a toolkit? Is there a checklist? And how does one find out that one is depression?
So, two different things. Let me answer the depression bit first. So, depression is the single largest illness in the world. According to WHO, 300 million people in the world suffer from depression. Single largest illness. Depression happens because of a biopsychosocial model where essentially you are looking at a chemical imbalance. And how do you identify sadness of mood, loss of interest, loss of pleasure, not liking to do things that you want doing, effect on sleep, effect on appetite, fatigue, concentration issues, feeling hopeless, helpless, worthless, feeling life's not worth living. Some of these symptoms put together consistently over a 2-week period in time, this could be depression. If you feel that's happening, or a colleague or a friend or a family member is happening, encourage them that they should go and meet someone. Start with a physician, start with a psychologist, start with a psychiatrist, start any place, but start. Take the initiative, take the step. I think that's the key aspect.
And have the faith that depression is curable.
Absolutely. Like any other illness. Like any other illness. I mean, success and efficacy is very much there of the treatment. And coming to the mental health playbook, I think it comes down to the balance of life. If you lead a balanced life, which would mean when you work effectively, but at work, you also have good social support, which is your colleagues. You feel a sense of purpose and positivity, you are well organized, and you manage stress well. Then your personal space, you have quality relationships, you invest in them, you learn to take time out for your own self, invest in things that you like doing that give you joy, learn to take multiple breaks, have a good sleep appetite, relaxation, exercise combo going on for you. So if you look at this thing, which is social support, personal and professional, organized at work or academics, what is there, relationships, personal and professional, and a balanced life, and doing things that you like doing. Put all of this together. And if you struggle because of any reason, then unmute yourself, talk to someone. You talk to someone, that also is very much a self-help toolkit, because when you bottle it up, it becomes bigger than what it is.
There is a defined stereotypes in society. This is right, this is wrong, this is how it happens. If your life hasn't gone like this, if you faced hardships, then you're somewhere not worth. So tell us that how much the pursuit of societal norms which are established, the pursuit of happiness in a way that it is very textbook, how does that stress of not being able to match those benchmarks, those impacts an individual, and how can one guard against that? Because everyone's life is unique. Everyone gets what they need to get from the universe at a certain point, right? So comparing yourself with somebody else, talking to each other helps, but a lot of times we compare ourselves, and that's not healthy.
In your answer, Dr. Batra, in your question lies the answer. The fact of the matter is that we are unique. And the fact of the matter is we will all have our ups and downs. You will not find a successful person who's not had several downs. You may be a Sachin Tendulkar, but you will score a zero. You may end up scoring more runs than anybody else, but you would have also scored zeros. You may be a Ronaldo, you'll miss a penalty kick, but yet you are the greatest, as they say. And that's a fact of life. Federer would have lost a first round match as well. That's life. But you don't compare. The moment you compare, you lose your sense of individuality. When you stop being who you are and you try to be somebody else, successfully it's just not possible. Because it's your individuality, your skill base, your support system, your motivation, your ambition, your goals, your path, and your success. Nobody else has a role to play in it.
Dr. Parekh, how can celebrities, you talked about that figures in the society can play a positive role in spreading awareness and taking the taboo out of it. Can you expound on that a little bit more?
Let's say 100 people, experts like me, give 1,000 lectures like the one that you and I are doing, or a conversation that we are doing, and measure the impact. Now let's pick somebody who's a well-known figure. Could be from media, could be from sports, could be from politics, could be from journalism. A few million people see this individual as a role model. One comment, one sensitive comment, one guide, one nudge by this individual will be like 1,000 of our talks. That's a fact. So when you have a celebrity giving an advertisement of a consumer product. Why is that happening? Because the consumer maker knows, or the product maker knows, that the consumer is going to be more likely to pick this product because it's been endorsed by whom they perceive as a role model. So if the same role model picks up issues that matter and talks about them, and we've seen that in the recent past, there have been people from sports, from films, from politics who've talked about their struggle with mental health, and we know for a fact it has had a positive impact because more people feel that if he or she can get it, I can also get it. If they can take help, I can also take help. That's how normalization happens.
What are corporates doing to get good mental health for their colleagues?
Kavi, I think that's a question for the corporate sector to answer, because plus I don't think it can be a generalized. I think everybody would be doing something or the other. I just feel that mental health outcomes need to be prioritized by corporate today.
Okay, sir.
I think that is the key. If you start valuing mental health outcomes, if that is one of the tools you use to measure your success as an organization, and in your vision, mission statement, well-being of your employees is as much as important as all other aspects, I think we'll be able to make an impact.
Okay, sir. So I would also like to talk about the role of the subconscious minds, like a subconscious mind, like how it affects our dreams, how powerful it is.
See,
So, what would you like to say about the subconscious mind versus the conscious mind?
there have been so many different definitions in the past few decades. They have come and gone, and I don't anymore see um, the mind in terms of the conscious and subconscious. There are so many different kinds of vectors. There is a social angle, which is the environment which is playing on us. There is such a profound biological component, which is our genetics, our neuroanatomy, neurophysiology, neurochemistry. Then there is your upbringing. There are so many other factors, your peers. All of that has an impact on us. This entire thing about this is conscious, that's subconscious, by itself is a dated way to look at it, because science and mental health has progressed into a lot more well-defined, although there is a lot more to go, but there's a lot more to that. So my opinion on this is that one really doesn't need to get into the conscious subconscious thing. As far as dreams are concerned, dreams at the end of the day are dreams. So just don't give them value. Remember that you will remember only a handful of dreams than what you've actually seen. Just don't give them much value. I think that's what.
Dr. Parekh, Neera Shrivastava is asking, don't you think spiritual wellness is what is needed? How is that incorporated by mental health professionals? They seem to be disconnected from it. Is the real key to well-being? And so I don't know how to respond to that question. I'll let you know.
I think two parts to your question. Of course, spiritual well-being is very much a part of our mental well-being. There is no question about that. I mean, even if you look at the definition of health, or what is normal health would include physical, psychological, emotional, social, and spiritual.
Mind, body, soul.
Yeah, so let's be very clear about it. To say that mental health practitioners would be disconnected from the spirituality component, I think is a little bit of a generalization and probably not the best understanding. I may not necessarily speak about my belief systems or express them in the certain domain of the nature of the work I do, but that does not mean that one does not have that aspect. But I've always believed that our spiritual self and spiritual health is as much important, like I said, in the definition of health.
Dr. Parekh, as a result of these uncertain times, are you getting a lot of new cases, especially of anxiety and panic disorder? And would you advise medication or counseling?
No, I don't think it can be as simple as that answer. Let's be very
cookie cutter approach doesn't work.
Yeah, and one needs to be very clear about it. If you are diagnosing somebody, let's say, as a panic disorder or some kind of an anxiety disorder, and fulfills the criteria of an illness, then based on the severity, you will decide whether the person requires a form of counseling or psychotherapy or medications or both. That's one component. Second aspect, have increased number of people been experiencing stress and anxiety? Yes. To say that we are getting an increased number of people, not very easy to answer that question, because the percentage, the prevalence of problems in any case, the existing prevalence pre-COVID is only very high, right? So even if the number which has been consistently increasing because of awareness and accessibility and some of the other parameters, to say that it would be pure post-COVID, I don't think we would be able to statistically be able to confirm that at this moment in time. But I do accept that stress, anxiety, and its manifestations have increased by and large in the society, which does not mean that illnesses have, right? We need to, kind of understand the difference between the two. And the management of this anxiety would include the key component, the social support system. People who have good support systems will experience the stress much lesser. People who will have less social support system, they'll experience the same stress more, and there lies in the difference between what well-being would be if you were to look at only one component.
So, Dr. Parekh, I want to ask you, have you received any feedback from your patients who might think that therapy in person is, as opposed to online sessions, it's different, as in person is better?
Kavi, to be honest, right now for us to say what is better, what is not better, we do not have a longitudinal comparable data available. I think we need to understand it like this. If we would have not been doing online work in the entire medical specialties, why only mental health, right? Then those people who could have been helped would have not been helped. I mean, I have people whom I've been treating for past several years who come from across the country. So if the border is sealed, if public transport is not there, if trains are not working, if flights are not working, how would that individual be helped? I think we need to understand that in the given scenario, all of us across fields, not just medical, have used the digital medium because it's the only medium available.
Yes.
So to say that whether it will be equally efficacious or not, I think is not that important as compared to the fact that we need to help.
A lot of younger people have moved to addiction of drugs, alcohol, so on and so forth, smoking. How do they kind of get off these
See,
addictions?
over the years, I've always felt responsible as an adult, as a person who works in the field of education, and as a mental health professional. I've always felt exceptionally bad when I see very young people getting into substance abuse. I just feel that it's a collective failure of the society. By not empowering them with skills, by not creating enough awareness, by not ensuring that the access is made exceptionally difficult with zero tolerance. Because when young people, because of peers, because of social conformity, because of forced experimentation, because of faulty meaning associated, because of poor role models around them, end up using a substance, we don't realize how many lives get affected, short term and long term. There is so much evidence about how substance abuse, if it starts younger, has a long term impact on physical health, mental health, executive functions, cognitive functions. There is nothing glamorous about it. There is nothing cool about it, right? I mean, if there is anything, it's only that you are doing slow self-harm, right? And that cannot be justified just because my friend has one. It cannot be justified because, oh, it's a party and we all have it. Oh, we have it only sometime. That's absolute rubbish. And it's irresponsible for adults to have it. It's irresponsible for seniors to have it in front of juniors. It's irresponsible for parents to have it in front of children. Irresponsible for elder siblings to have it in front of children. We need to understand this. I think it's a royal societal failure when young people, school-going children, end up being exposed to and experiment with substances.
Is how do you encourage a colleague or a family member to seek help, to ask for help?
I think you educate them. Educate them. You educate them about what that thing is. Help them understand the cause. Please don't victimize. Please don't be judgmental. Please don't be critical. Please don't nag. Please don't push. Be sensitive. Be empathetic. And facilitate, guide, handhold them to go to an expert and seek help. Bring a sense of responsible, connected positivity about it.
There's a comment/question. There should be more professionals, but only schools and hospitals create positions. The only more people will take this profession. Why don't you promote this? I think maybe it's to me or to you. And then there is Dr. Dogra again saying, won't it be right that mental health professional associations bring it more in the open to encourage people to seek help, especially because of the stigma attached in our country? As an auxiliary police officer with NIPD, he must have been, I recall, post 9/11 therapy was compulsory. Those things can only happen if the mental health professionals bring it out in the open and say it's common, treatable as a physical illness. Dr. Dogra, that's what Dr. Parekh said right up front. So he agrees with you, and yes, that's what he said. Suresh Joseph is saying, I believe emotional or behavioral wellness leads to one's spiritual wellness. Psychology has its roots in philosophy and is not leading to spirituality. Kindly clarify.
Our life, if you look at our life 360 degrees, there will be spirituality, there will be philosophy, there will be psychology, because it's also an interplay between individuals. We need to understand that aspect as well. So we don't need to look at life in terms of as though it is an either this or that, or what percentage of this and what percentage of that. Life is one dynamic fluid. You won't be able to differentiate the colors and tastes and flavors out of it. But I also want to also mention what Dr. Batra said. You're absolutely spot on. I don't think merely healthcare, and although I still feel healthcare needs to do a lot more, ma'am, healthcare needs to make mental health mainstream. Even today, a lot of healthcare providers are not having enough mental health approach, which needs to happen. Similar for schools and educational institutes, but corporate India needs to actually incorporate mental health outcomes. That's how the whole professional cycle will also, there'll be more and more people who will also be willing to see it as a viable career. And that's, I completely agree to what you just said.
Thank you. My last question before I bring in Kavi. Dr. Parekh, doctors, and I'm not talking of mental health doctors, I'm talking of doctors, over the last 120 days are under tremendous pressure themselves because they are, so to say, in the line of fire. They are the first responders. What are you doing to make sure that your fellow doctors feel more safe and feel better than they've done in the last 120 days? They've been under tremendous, they've had anxiety, I have doctors as friends, they're very worried, and rightly so. So, somebody needs to look at the doctor's mental health also. They're also normal people.
So yes, but I think my response to this is, first, I think a lot of gratitude. I think it's inspiring, overwhelmingly remarkable of what medical fraternity has done. I think all of us need to actually understand that what medical fraternity has done is absolutely unprecedentedly remarkable. It's a huge thing to leave your home, go, be vulnerable, be exposed, treat, do your duty, come back to your home, make your family vulnerable as well, and go through that anxiety and get your job. And I think that's inspiring. And hopefully in decades to come, these are the stories young children will learn, that when the right time comes, people stand up and be counted for. When it comes to the impact on healthcare practitioners, my honest answer to this is, most healthcare practitioners, most of my friends and colleagues who are right now frontline workers, whatever impact is going to happen, we'll probably realize it a lot later. Right now, they're all in the thick of things. They're all in the flow. They're just doing what they are supposed to do. But at the same time, I think most healthcare providers and organizations, including us, are doing internally whatever best we can do to provide for support for our healthcare workers, our paramedical staff. But I think society has a role to play as well. Society needs to really applaud what healthcare and paramedical staff have done. I think it's just remarkable.
Thank you so much. If we talk to you 12 months from now, what are the changes you would have liked to see in the mental health ecosystem? You talked of not enough doctors. We understand that. You talked of change in the societal expectations or the taboo coming down. You talked about role models who have large followings, talking of it, language that makes it more acceptable. Beyond these, if we talk to you in 12 months, what are the changes you'd like to see?
So mental health will require many more months for big changes to happen. But I'll respond to this more on the lines of what I would hope in 12 months at a social psychology and our mental well-being as a collective. I think we just need to learn from COVID. COVID has taught us a lot. If we learn, imbibe, change, I think that's what matters. So if we've learned minimalistic living, let's accept it. If we continue to respect it, it'll do us good. We've learned that we can take care of our own selves. If we continue to do that, it'll do us good. We've learned that families can actually stay together and spend some quality time if we continue to do that. We've seen so many inspiring altruistic stories of people lending support to each other. I hope that continues. We've seen stories of generosity and compassion and empathy. I hope we stay with our generosity and compassion and empathy. We've seen reduction in trolling. I hope trolling also goes away from the world.
Okay. This question Kavi wanted to ask is, digital is an enabler. We're talking through a digital, right? If this wasn't, right, we do work through digital. This is work for us. Sometimes you would do your sessions through this, right? But digital has also increased the exposure on social media. It has increased the screen time, right? So tell us the role that digital plays in a positive way, and how do we mitigate the negative role of technology or the negative role of social media?
So two aspects. Right now, Dr. Batra, I think what has kept all of us going has been the digital interface, and let's accept it. Our work has been digital, our social connection, our entertainment, our recreation, our family time, a lot of it has been digitalized, and it has helped us go through this phase of COVID. Post-COVID, yes, we need to be careful because we will need to essentially digitally detox also, because too much of digital time is never going to be good. When it comes to social media, I'll give you examples. Social media can have a huge positive impact. We do a mental health advocacy initiative where we have young 15 to 20-year-olds who work through social media to create mental health awareness, and we see the impact that they have. We did a summer internship with school-going children. They did projects on mental health, and we saw a positive impact. So yes, social media is a way where you can reach, do advocacy, make change, create positivity. But when you use the same social media in a negative way, name calling, cyberbullying, trolling, false images, faulty information, if you are swayed away by this whole aspect of I need to look like you, how many likes you have, I need to do this so that I get more likes, and you get into that cycle, that's when the negative sides start coming in. If we stick to the positive, let go of the negativity, social media can have a positive impact on mankind.
So, Dr. Parekh, how does physical health play a role in mental health and vice versa?
Kavi, they are connected. So if I'm physically unwell for a long time, it's bound to have an impact on my psychology. If I'm psychologically struggling, it's bound to have an impact upon my physical health. We need to see our mind, body as in sync, and we need to take care of both. You don't take care of one thing over the other. You value both. You prioritize your well-being, and your well-being will have physical and mental component both.